Please convene the meeting.
Okay, we're here to kick off the meeting, the Contra Costa Bus Transit Coordinating Committee meeting. We don't have a chair for this committee, so I will act in that capacity. We want to do some quick introductions. I'm Peter Engel with Contra Costa Transit Authority. Charlie?
Charlie Anderson from Western Contra Costa Transit.
Rob?
Rob Thompson from Western Transit.
Me?
Jeannie Krieg from Tri-Delta Transit, also Eastern Contra Costa Transit Authority.
Steve?
Steve Pont, Eastern Contra Costa Transit Authority.
Chris?
Chris Andrzejczak with AC Transit.
Nathan?
Nathan Landau, AC Transit.
And Rick?
Rick Ramis, your County Connection.
Ruby?
Ruby Hordick, County Connection.
Eric?
Eric Chung, County Connection.
And then we have our ex officio bus transit representatives. Monica, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Monica Wilson, bus representative on CCTA, but I'm a board member on Tri-Delta.
Great. Dr. Powers?
Yes, Maureen Powers. I'm the small operator alternate ex officio on CCTA, and I'm on the board of Western Contra Costa Transit Authority.
And then Firdos?
Fifi Jahan, I am your administrative help from the authority today.
Carrie Ann?
Carrie Ann Grover, clerk of the board.
Great. Well, thank you all. I will go into public comment. Is there any members of the public? Carrie Ann?
We have received no public comment cards at this time.
Oh, okay. And I don't think anybody's on the line if somebody wants to make a public comment.
Yeah, I don't see anyone.
Okay, we'll move on to regular agenda items. So this is an action item. It's the approval for fiscal year 2021 Measure J allocation for the countywide bus services program. You all received the packet that has the allocation amounts, as well as the resolution that will be going to the board. These are going to the planning committee and board in July. We've set it up this year so we can make direct payment. We're not going to do PO. It's kind of a long process. We're just going to make a direct payment to the operator on the funding resolution. And again, as we discussed previously, this is just a 6-month funding allocation. We'll go back to the board in probably January, and we will go back to the board in January and do a funding resolution for the remaining 6 months. I did want to share with you real quick, Brian Kelleher wasn't able to be on our call, our CFO, but he did give me an update on his most recent discussions with HDL, who's our financial consultants that helps us project revenues. So for 1920, this current fiscal year, we have paid out 90% of a projected $91.8 million overall sales tax budget. This is 90% to the bus operators, to you guys. And then, as you know, in May, we projected that 91.8 million would go down to 80.5 million. So the most recent word from HDL is there was a stronger than anticipated January-March revenues. And so now they're thinking that it looks like we may end up at the year, end up at about closer to 84, 85 million rather than the 80.5. So that's good news. So we will definitely be paying back a portion of that, or we will be giving you a portion of that 10% holdback if that's the case. So you will still have potentially some revenue coming in to close out this 1920. And for 2021, we budgeted 76.5 million based off of current projections. Now we're thinking it may be a little more, just over 80 million. So there was some strong quarters in there. Now, they also anticipate that recovery estimates will be over the next 2 years will be fairly strong. So of course, this is all before the most recent issues with, COVID tests going up and more positive tests, more positive occurrences of the COVID. So, we'll see. As far as I've read most recently, the governor plans to continue with the reopening strategy. So as long as that continues, it looks like there's some stronger numbers coming in than we anticipated. But, again, there's that caveat of who knows what will happen with the numbers increasing. So I wanted to give you that little piece of good news. Hopefully it plays out so those funds come in faster. So that's my staff report for this first item. So are there any questions?
Peter, this is Charlie. So I'm just curious, if there is a release of some portion of the 10%, what's the process for that? When will it happen?
So as soon as we know the finals in August, the final numbers, the end of August, we can that money is already in a PO. It's already been allocated, and anything up to that 10% has been approved by the board. So as long as it's within that 10%, we can just send it immediately. There's no invoicing or anything. So I'll stay on Brian to find out when we get that. Usually when the number is finalized, he sends an email to everybody with what the final number is. And so that'll be my trigger to go ahead and start the paperwork to get those funds out to you.
Thanks.
Here, I guess it used to be my job, but it comes out on August 20th.
Well, that's the end of August.
Huh?
That's kind of the end of August.
Yeah, no, it comes out August 20th. But actually, I have a real question as well, Peter. Have you had a chance to look at the, two? So does that mean that, assuming the board approves this in July, that that finance will be releasing the payments sometime late July, early August?
Yes.
And then 2, did you have a chance to look at what the reserve amount was that we've been holding back, and if we can use that for fiscal year 21, even if it's depending what the amounts are?
Yeah, I think the amounts aren't high. I did look them up. I don't remember off the top of my head what they are. Let me pull them up here while we're talking about it. I remember we talked about that in the context that if it went below the current, in other words, if by paying the 90% we overpaid, that we would potentially or could potentially look at the reserves to backfill that. If there's some interest in using the reserves for some other reason, just to pay out in 2021, for instance, because of what's going on, I mean, that we can certainly discuss that and take it to the board. But like I said, I want to say the numbers, well, let me find it, sorry. So the number for this program 14, countywide bus, is roughly $4.5 million in reserve. And for express bus, it's $3.9 million in reserve. So I can do the allocation if we just based it on, the current allocation model that's in the expenditure plan. Then we can see what that amount is. You can all see what basically that amount is, and then, see if you want to go to the authority board and ask to use that reserve.
I mean, I guess my thought was if things get worse, it's just nice to know what that number is and potentially be able to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, so far you've got good news, but as you also said, there is a second, either an extension of the first wave or an extension or a second wave.
Right.
I'm just wanting to just have that number in the back of my head, just so in case. Hey, Peter, if things are worse, maybe we do want to draw in it.
Yeah. So so it's roughly $8 million. And then the split is basically County Connection, AC Transit get 2%. And no, I have to look and see. Not 2%, 40%, whatever the program number is. And then, so it wouldn't be a lot, but like you said, it's there, and it's a reserve for this type of time. So any more questions on this first item?
Just in terms of the 1920 money that's coming in, a little extra tranche of it comes in, does that money need to go to your 1920 expenses, or can it be rolled over into 2021?
I'm not sure how it's however your finance group does it.
Oh, so it's up to us. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to send it out in August. So if you've already closed your, 1920 books at that point, but we won't know what the amount is until August 20th.
Right.
We would just put it towards 21. We'll know what we do.
So Peter, do you need a motion to recommend that this be moved forward to the authority board?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make that motion then.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Charlie Anderson.
And this is.
I'll
Jeannie
second
Krieg.
it. This is Chris.
Oh, sorry.
Who was the second?
Chris,
You have two seconds.
AC Transit. Okay, can we
If
call?
you'll allow me to take that one, Gene.
My pleasure.
You want to call the roll, Fifi?
Yes, sorry, I just had a couple of people talking over each other, couldn't hear. Okay, AC Transit, how do you vote?
Yes.
County Connection,
Yes.
Tri-Delta Transit,
Yes.
WestCat.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, item number 2 is the other action item. I don't really have a long staff report. It's basically the same as item 1, except this is the Express Bus Funds Program.
I'll move this.
Did you get that, Fifi? County Connection moved.
This is Charlie Westcat, second.
Shall we, Fifi, you ready to call the roll?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, you guys are going a little too fast for me. Who was the motion and who was the second?
Rick Ramasier, County Connection, made the motion. Charlie Anderson, WestCat, seconded.
Okay, AC Transit, how do you vote?
Yes.
County Connection, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tri-Delta Transit,
Yes.
WestCat,
Yes.
perfect. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. So the last item on the agenda is just an information item, and it was an opportunity mostly for the authority and Monica and Maureen to kind of hear any updates that you might want them to pass on to the board at our next board meeting regarding COVID recovery, regarding the Blue Ribbon Transit Recovery Task Force. If there's any particular role that you guys are thinking about that you want the authority to take in supporting you guys in your efforts. This would be an opportunity just to talk a little bit about what's going on. Get updated. Charlie, you want to start? We could go in alphabetical order. I could have AC Transit start.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go first. I guess from the thing that occurs to me, and maybe Rick has already been dealing with this, is making sure that Contra Costa County and the health authorities in Contra Costa County understand, you know, the needs of the regional needs of the operators and the, you know, the plans that we have are the health on transit, or whatever exactly it's going to be called, plan that's being developed. And so, you know, to the extent that CCTA has a role in that, or at least can see it and make sure that, you know, that we're all on the same page as far as how transit is supposed to move forward, you know, in these current circumstances. That's the only thing I would highlight.
Did you want me to go next, Peter? Peter? You're muted, Peter.
Let me unmute.
Yeah. Did you want me to go next?
Go ahead, Rick. Go next.
All right. I don't have a lot to add to Chris. I do sit on the task force. We're meeting Monday. Hopefully the task force will endorse and recommend an allocation process for the second tranche of the CARES Act money. I think at this moment in time, all the operators are able to live with the recommendation. I think if you asked individual operators if they're completely happy, you wouldn't get anyone saying they're completely happy. It's, you know, you can imagine with, I think there's 24 operators involved in the tranche. You know, they all probably see the allocations are slightly different than what's on the table. But I think we all recognize that time is of the essence to get this money out. One, because there's an expectation from FTA that we'll get these grants drawn down before they close for the fall. They're when they shut down the grant process for a while this fall. And two, you know, we all need the funds. So I think that'll happen. Chris alluded to this health and safety plan that we're all jointly working on. WSP has a draft out. And so as of this morning. So one of the things I have to do when I hop off this call is make sure all the small operators have it. I'm not sure that's happened yet. And then the WSP team will be looking for operator comments over the next few days. The actual plan is not going to the Blue Ribbon Committee on Monday. What they're getting is a slide deck that summarizes what we're coming up with. And that's the level we hope to keep it at with that group, as opposed to having task force members go into the weeds of what's ostensibly a transit operator's plan. And then the other thing that's happening that I have to do at the same time when this call's over is, on behalf of Seamus Murphy at Samtrans, forward out to the small operators a joint letter that people are going to be asked to sign on to, relative to the operators are now trying with every task force meeting to have a joint letter that we're all behind to show that we're working together and try to influence the thinking of the task force member on some of the things on the agenda. I've not read the letter yet, so I can't even tell you what's in there. That was sent out this morning for us to review. I think the interesting stuff, and Peter, relative to the CTA or CMA, whatever you guys are called these days, in your role, will come after this meeting when we move into phase 2 of the task force, which is how do we work more closely together? How do we build a more seamless system? Those kinds of things. And I think the authority is going to have a lot of interest there relative to your work, as well as the transit operator. So I think, you know, one thing we're doing, Peter, that I think you're aware of is the small operators are meeting every Wednesday from 4 to 5. Those of us that can get on the call, sometimes not everyone can make it. There's conflicts and whatnot. And we've invited you to that and hope you'll continue to participate in that, because as we move away from passing out CARES Act money, as I said, I think the topics are going to get more interesting. to say the least. So that could be a good opportunity for you to make sure the authority's tied in. And I think that's about it. And, if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Jeannie, any perspectives from East County Tri-Delta Transit and what you're doing?
I'm very grateful that Rick is serving and representing all of us on the task force. I think from what I've heard, he's doing a great job. And like he said, if you talk to us individually, we're probably a little unhappy about what was sent out, but overall we can live with it. It looks good. And I'm surprised at the new attitude from MTC. I've really enjoyed working with those folks, and there's a very cooperative attitude and a cooperative way of approaching that we haven't seen in the past. So it's been a good exercise, and thank you, Rick, very much for representing us.
Well, thanks, Jeannie. I have a self-interest in doing it, so it's the job. I just want to say I think that if it wasn't clear before, it's very clear now with this process that there's a different person occupying the chair of executive director at MTC. I'll just leave it at that.
Charlie?
So I think that, the fun really does begin after the CARES Act money is allocated. And, it's a little bit frustrating to listen to the various representatives at the Blue Ribbon Task Force. I think the transit operators have done a good job, and I particularly want to, compliment Rick on kind of continuing to put forward the message that there are local needs. It's not all a big regional system. I think the task force is looking to assemble back a regional system, and fair enough, it's a legitimate question for MTC to grapple with. But Rick introduced the suggestion, which was picked up by the task force, that local elected officials be involved in the process so that they can make their needs known. And I think that Rick has also introduced school service as one critical need in our communities, one thing that we provide that is not really a regional need, but it's a local need. And that, it's the importance of some local transit to the local communities. So as the task force moves into this restructuring and reallocating of funds, I think, the local needs need to be taken into account. And I think a lot of the messages that sort of should have been articulated in the transit sustainability study, but were never articulated about, the operating efficiencies of the small operators and, their importance. It's time to get into that again, because there's a consolidation agenda from Solano County, which, Jim Sparing chairs the task force. So looking for that to surface in the coming weeks. And it's amazing how much influence, a couple of advocates have had under the label of seamless on state politicians, on, the discussion at the Blue Ribbon Committee. So it's going to be pretty interesting. But Rick, thank you again.
So Peter, if Charlie reminded me, this is a good time to bring this up. I think if I'm able to get the task force to agree that there should be, I call them workshops with local elected officials in each of the counties. I made the argument that a lot of local officials don't even know that they exist and that they're talking about rearranging transit in a significant way throughout the region. So I'm gonna keep on that. I know Amy Worth is on that point as well. And Jim Sparing told me off to the side in a side conversation, he thought that was a good idea as well. And I'm thinking if we move forward on that, 2CTA would be a good agency to help kind of put those together in Contra Costa County. So just wanted to flag that for you.
We'd be happy to do that. Well, thank you all for the report. The report's out on that. I will say that I have been participating in the Wednesday afternoon meetings And thank you, Rick, for inviting me to those. I missed this last Wednesday because I had a conflict, but it's been very enlightening to hear all the operators and here I am speaking to the choir. You guys already know this, but for Monica and Maureen, I mean, you're on the boards too, so I'm sure you've heard this, but the operators have gone above and beyond with this crisis in trying to protect both the public and their own employees throughout this, as far as, you know, manufacturing shields for the drivers and all this stuff that's happening in their shops, just you know, customization just to protect people and do things. And it's really been amazing. And, you know, hopefully the task force, I think the task force gets it. They're hearing about all these, you know, actually just transporting people that have tested positive to make sure they get into a quarantine location. So it's really been impressive. And from the authority, I want to thank you guys for all the work you're doing and appreciate the time today. We did our main topic of getting our allocations approved. And I think, I'm not sure if Monica or Marie, which one of you is going to be at the board meeting in July, but okay, Monica is. So Jeannie and I will work to make sure you have the information, you know, to report out. And what's
Hey,
going
Peter,
on.
can I ask one question though?
Yeah.
Eric. So this committee doesn't need to do anything in regards to the SDA money since we did what we did last year?
Correct.
All right.
So that STA money will flow, you know, as you know, it flows through MTC. All we do is give them the allocation percentages and then they take it from there. So they have all that. So that's good.
And one follow-up on that, Peter, the initial indication was that the community block grants of the SGA were not available for distribution until after the 1st of January of 2021.
Oh,
Have you
really?
gotten any information about that?
I haven't heard a thing about that. I'll follow up with MTC and see.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else have anything to add? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Great, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.